You are 3 weeks from finishing your rotation in the warrant squad when they pull you into a conference room with no windows and a door that locks from the inside. Your caseload at that point is manageable. 14 active fugitives, 7 of them low-risk skips, 2 violent offenders you've been tracking through a network of burner phones and cousin addresses in rural Kentucky. You are good at this work, not because you're fearless, but because you've trained yourself to think 3 steps ahead of people who are running. You understand the psychology of flight. You know what a man does when he needs to disappear and still can't stop calling his mother. The conference room has 4 people in it: your supervisor, a deputy chief you've only met once, a woman from the DOJ's organized crime section whose name badge says Reyes, and a man in civilian clothes who introduces himself only as a coordinator from the Judicial Security Division. The DOJ woman slides a folder across the table before anyone speaks. Inside it is a photograph of a courthouse in Memphis, another photograph of a burned vehicle, a third photograph of a man you recognize from the Fugitive board, Dario Vass, 41 years old, former enforcer for a trafficking network that operates through commercial freight corridors across the Southeast. Vass disappeared 18 months ago, 2 days before he was scheduled to testify in a RICO proceeding that would have dismantled 11 years of documented operations. The case collapsed without him. 3 of the federal witnesses who were supposed to corroborate his testimony are now dead. One of them was a deputy marshal in the Southern District of Tennessee. You read his name at the bottom of the page and you feel something shift in your chest. Your supervisor tells you that Vass is alive, that he is embedded inside a network that moves fugitives for money, a kind of underground railroad built for criminals run with the same operational discipline as a legitimate logistics company. They call it, internally, the route. It services people who can pay. It has been operating for at least 6 years. The deputy chief leans forward and tells you that the route currently has 3 federal fugitives on its active manifest, one of them connected to a pending terrorism financing case. He tells you that conventional surveillance has failed 3 times. He tells you that 2 prior attempts to place confidential informants inside the network ended with those informants being identified and one of them being found in a drainage canal outside Biloxi. He pauses. He says they need someone who can pass. Someone with no traceable federal footprint in the criminal world. Someone young enough to be credible as a new operator and experienced enough to hold their cover under interrogation pressure. He is looking at you when he says this. You ask how long. The DOJ woman says 6 months minimum. You ask what the legend is. She slides another document across. Your name is now Duras. You have a sealed federal record for interstate fraud from 8 years ago, constructed and buried in a system that will hold up to any background pull. You have a work history in commercial trucking, a storage unit in Chattanooga registered in that name, a phone with 2 years of manufactured call history, and a LinkedIn profile with 47 connections, all of them accounts created for this purpose. You will enter the network as a driver looking for gray market courier work. You will not carry a badge. You will not carry a service weapon in the field, unless the operational threat assessment requires it. You have a single contact number for emergency extraction, which you will memorize and never write down. You are told not to use it unless you have no other option. The room goes quiet for a moment. Your supervisor says, "You'll know." You say yes because the dead marshal's name is still sitting at the bottom of that page and you cannot look away from it. The first 3 weeks of the operation are almost mundane. Duras gets a room at a weekly rate motel outside of Nashville and starts making contact through a chain of intermediaries the team has identified. A mechanic who runs a chop shop that fronts as a salvage yard, a dispatcher named Felix who moves freight through a network of owner-operators and has been quietly flagged as a route affiliate for 2 years. You approach Felix through the mechanic, the way someone who has been vouched for approaches. You are careful. You are slow. You let Felix do most of the talking in the first 3 conversations because people who are running something illegal need to feel like they discovered you, not the other way around. You mention the right things at the right moments. You reference a job in Birmingham that went sideways due to federal heat. You display low-grade frustration with legitimate work. You are planting seeds and waiting. Felix gives you a small job in week 4. A passenger, no name, a man you pick up at a gas station off I-40 and drive to a motel in Clarksville where someone else takes him over. You don't ask questions, you don't look at the man's face longer than necessary. You are not there to arrest anyone yet. You are there to be trusted. It takes every year of your training to drive that vehicle and do nothing because the man in your backseat has an outstanding warrant for aggravated assault and your instinct is screaming at you, but you suppress it because if you pull this thread now, you lose the entire network, and the network is worth more than one arrest. You make the drop. You report the license plate, the handoff location, and the receiving individual's physical description through a dead drop system your team set up. Your handler confirms the man was picked up quietly by local law enforcement the following day in a way that cannot be traced back to a federal tip. You exhale for the first time in 72 hours. Felix promotes you in small increments. By month 3, you are running regular routes, sometimes with passengers, sometimes carrying documents or phones. You are evaluated constantly, though never directly. You understand this because you've done enough fugitive work to recognize how criminal networks audit their own. Someone always seems to be at the same rest stop. Someone always seems to make conversation at a diner near your routes. You treat every one of these encounters as an assessment, and you perform them correctly. Not too relaxed, not too rigid. A man who is careful because he has learned to be, not because he is nervous. There is a difference, and people who operate in this world can feel it. You know that because you feel it too. The difference between a person who is hiding something and a person who has simply adapted to a life where caution is the baseline. The operation shifts in month 4, when Felix introduces you to a man named Stroud. You recognize the name from your pre-operational briefing. Stroud is believed to be a mid-level coordinator for the route, one step below whoever runs the actual logistics architecture. He is in his 50s, measured with the kind of stillness that comes from having survived long enough in a dangerous profession to eliminate all unnecessary movement. He shakes your hand in a diner in Murfreesboro and looks at you with eyes that are doing a full inventory of everything you are. You hold his gaze. You drink your coffee. You do not speak more than necessary. Stroud asks you one question that has nothing to do with the operation. He asks where you grew up. You say Western Virginia. He nods and says nothing else for 2 minutes. Then he tells Felix to move you to the secondary tier. You don't react. You drink your coffee. Inside, something between triumph and dread is expanding in your ribcage because you have just moved closer to the center of something you cannot fully see. The secondary tier means you are now moving people who are more than just criminal skips. In month 5, you transport a man whose photograph you have seen in a federal briefing packet. He does not know this. He sits in your vehicle for 4 hours and tells you about his daughter's swimming lessons as if he is a normal person. And you listen, because listening is part of holding cover, and also because you are not yet certain who is monitoring this interaction and from which side. You report everything through the dead drop. Your handler confirms the man is on the active manifest for the terrorism financing case your deputy chief mentioned in that windowless conference room 5 months ago. He confirms that the extraction team is in position for the destination handoff. You drive. You deliver. The man is arrested 40 minutes after you leave him. The arrest is made to look like a routine traffic stop. You are told the cover is holding. But then something changes. It always changes. 3 days after the arrest, Stroud calls you on the number he gave you. Not the contact number from Felix, but a separate line that means he reached out to you directly, outside the normal communication architecture of the route. He tells you to meet him. He gives you a location and a time. He does not explain. You call your handler from a payphone and report the meeting. Your handler says go. You go. Stroud is alone in a parking structure off a highway interchange. He gets into your vehicle and he tells you, without preamble, that someone on the secondary tier leaked the handoff location for the man who was arrested. He says it wasn't Felix. He says the pool of people who knew that route is small. He looks at you while he says this, and you look back at him, and your mind is running a very fast and very cold calculation about what he knows, what he suspects, and what he is willing to do about it. You tell him you drove the route exactly as instructed, made no stops, talked to no one outside the drop contact. You say it with the flat certainty of a man who is telling the truth about something that will cost him if it's doubted. Stroud studies you. He says he believes you. He says he is telling you this because he wants you to be careful, because there are people above him who will not distinguish between a leak and the person who happened to be in proximity to one. He tells you that Dario Vass is in transit, that he is moving him personally, that you will be backup transport in case the primary vehicle is compromised. You have been in this operation for 5 months, and in 30 seconds, Stroud has just handed you the objective you were deployed to complete. Dario Vass, the man whose disappearance collapsed a RICO case, the man whose absence let a trafficking network keep operating, the man whose choices led, through a chain of events and retaliations you can trace but cannot prove entirely, to the death of the deputy marshal in Tennessee whose name you have not forgotten. You say yes. You say it the same way you say everything now. Levelly, without eagerness, with the economy of a man who does not need to perform his willingness. That night, in your motel room, you run through every possible scenario. If you use the extraction number now, Stroud may survive the arrest and identify you, which burns the operation and puts every person in your network at risk of retaliation before the federal case is built. If you wait and play out the Vass transport, you get Vass and potentially Stroud in the same arrest window, but you are doing so without a weapon, with a cover that has developed a hairline crack in Stroud's trust, and with the knowledge that Stroud has already told someone above him about the leak, which means you are now being watched from a direction you cannot fully identify. You don't sleep. You don't need sleep to make this decision, but the absence of sleep sharpens the edges of the decision until they are very clean and very precise. You call your handler through the dead drop system, you relay the Vass transport information, your handler goes quiet for longer than usual and then tells you that the team needs 48 hours to position. You have 36. You negotiate. You are given 34 hours and a promise that there will be 3 vehicles in position and 1 aerial asset. You ask about the weapon. Your handler pauses and then says a package will be left at the salvage yard, inside a toolbox in the 3rd bay from the left. You retrieve it that evening. You do not feel better holding it. You feel more precisely located in the situation, which is a different thing. The Vass transport begins on a Thursday morning. Stroud picks you up in a gray panel van and drives for 2 hours without speaking, and then takes a county road that is not on any commercial map and parks behind a grain silo. A second vehicle arrives. You see Dario Vass for the first time in person, heavier than his photograph, older, with the careful blankness of a man who has been running long enough to stop feeling the running. He gets into your vehicle. Stroud gets back into his. You are given a destination 30 miles northeast and told the primary vehicle will take a different route to meet you there. You drive with Dario Vass in your passenger seat for 22 minutes. You know your team is tracking the vehicle. You know the window is opening. Vass makes small talk the same way the man before him did, the way people do when they are in transit and need to pretend the transit is ordinary. He asks how long you've been driving for Stroud. You tell him 8 months. He nods. He says Stroud is reliable. You agree you are 2 miles from the intercept point when you make the decision that you have been building toward since that conference room, with no windows, since that dead marshal's name at the bottom of the page. You reach the intercept point and you slow the vehicle without warning. 3 cars move into position in under 10 seconds. Your team is very good. Vass understands what is happening before you speak, because men like Vass have been rehearsing this moment in the back of their minds for 18 months, and they recognize it when it arrives. You identify yourself. You tell him he is under arrest. You say it with your badge in your hand and your voice completely level, and the badge feels heavier than it should after 5 months of not holding it. Stroud is taken 2 miles away at the same moment, which your handler coordinated to the minute. The network begins to unravel over the following 72 hours in the way that networks do when 2 of their load-bearing members are removed simultaneously. Not all at once, but in a cascade of panicked decisions made by people who no longer trust each other. Felix is arrested on day 2. 4 additional route affiliates are taken before the week is out. The terrorism financing case is reopened with Vass as the primary cooperating witness, a development that your operational report describes as significant and that you describe to no one, because you are back in a room without windows, this time being debriefed by 3 people from a task force whose full scope you were not read into before the operation began. Your cover is officially burned. Duras ceases to exist. You return the phone, the legend documents, the manufactured history. Someone else will wear a different name in a different network sometime soon. And you know this the way you know all the structural facts of this work. Not with enthusiasm, not with dread, just with the flat acknowledgement of how it functions. What stays with you is not the arrest. It is the 22 minutes in the vehicle with Dario Vass before the intercept, the way he talked about Stroud's reliability, the complete absence in him of the weight of what he had done, the witnesses who had believed in a system enough to testify, the marshal in Tennessee, the families who had expected a prosecution and received a collapse instead. Vass talked about reliability and you said yes. And you drove and you thought about all of it and none of it showed on your face, because the work demands that nothing shows on your face, and by now you have become so practiced at that discipline that you sometimes cannot tell, in the quiet of an ordinary morning, which parts of you are still you and which parts are something the job built to survive itself. You are back on the warrant squad within 2 weeks. New caseload, 15 active fugitives, 3 violent offenders. The rotation continues. Someone from the Judicial Security Division sends you a note through your supervisor that says the Tennessee case has been designated a priority proceeding and that your operational contribution has been formally noted. It does not say anything about the deputy marshal. It does not need to. You pull the first file from your new stack, a man who cut his ankle monitor in Georgia and drove west. He has been gone 11 days. He is good at not being found, but no one is as good at it as they think they are, and you have learned how to think the way people think when they need to disappear and still cannot stop calling the people they love. You open the file. You read. You begin to work. The door to the windowless conference room is always unlocked from the inside. You have never once left through it without knowing it will open again.